to another episode of the Modern Manifestation Podcast. I'm your host, Bree Brown, a lettuce-hating, wine-loving, curses like a sailor, recovering perfectionist. Having thrived in a male-dominated, commission-based industry, I'm passionate about helping women boldly pursue their life goals. In this space, we build confidence with our mindset, manifestation, and spirituality. I believe that your life manifests as a result of who you are, not what you do, and that your personality creates your personal reality. Join this growing community to increase your net worth by increasing your self-worth. Now let's jump into today's topic. Hello, my beautiful souls, and welcome back to the Modern Manifestation Podcast. Today, we are continuing the theme of talking about things on the podcast that Bree is actively working on for herself. Yes, listing myself in third person here. So, what is today's topic? Today's topic is all about prioritizing self-care and what that actually looks like. Emphasis on the actually looks like part. And today was actually inspired by a workout. I'm in the middle of the workout and the coach says something like, eating healthy is self-care. And then as we keep going along, she's like, working out is self-care. This is your self-care for today. Make sure that you're showing up for yourself. And who knew that a coach in an online workout session could be so inspiring? And I really sat with that message throughout the entire workout. And sometimes that's just how these podcast episodes come to me. Like I'm in the middle of something, I hear something, it triggers, and then all of a sudden I have this idea and I'm like, let me just go record this real quick. This is something that I think people might be interested in hearing. So if you ever think to yourself, wow, Bree must really have it all together. She plans these things out. She writes the episodes in advance. She spends plenty of time working on them and then getting them out to us. You would be incorrect. I would say more than half of my episodes are spontaneous. Sometimes they are planned, but I would say more often than not, it's just spark of the moment, inspired action. I just try to show up to the mic when the inspiration strikes. And that is how we arrived at today's topic, talking about self-care, prioritizing self-care, and getting really clear on what that looks like and what self-care truly is. For many years, I had the wrong idea about self-care. I thought that self-care was the same thing as seeking comfort. But that's not what self-care is. What a practice of self-care really looks like is doing something that supports your highest good, or something that nourishes you in some way. Not comfort, nourishment. And the reason I make this distinction is because self-care has been grossly misunderstood and misrepresented by social media. So much so that I even tricked myself into believing that I was practicing self-care when I was really seeking comfort. And the reason why this is so important because seeking comfort doesn't always help you with your goals. Seeking comfort may keep you from taking inspired action. Seeking comfort keeps you where you are. And of course, there is a time and place for seeking comfort. And you're your own best advocate for that. But I'm seeing a lot of this narrative online. People will post things like, I should be working out, but I'm choosing Netflix, #self-care. Or, today I'm ignoring my haters because #self-care. And don't get me wrong, there are instances where this is self-care. And maybe that is what you need to nourish yourself in that moment. Maybe you injured yourself the day before, or you're menstruating. And so you do choose Netflix over a workout because that is what your body needs to be nourished. Or maybe you're feeling mentally abused by your friends or your haters, and so you need to tap out for a bit to give yourself a mental health break. That, of course, is self-care. But what I'm talking about specifically is that sometimes we make this claim. We put on the hat of, I am practicing self-care, when we're really just seeking comfort or we might be avoiding something. So in those same two instances, that might look something like, I'm choosing Netflix over a workout because I just don't feel like working out. Or I just don't want to do it. I don't want to be uncomfortable right now. or I'm ignoring my haters because I fear confrontation. So I choose to ignore or to avoid. Self-care is a beautiful practice, but we need to be mindful that we're actually practicing self-care, and we're not practicing avoidant or comfort-seeking behaviors when they're not appropriate for the situation, or if it's not something that's really aligned with our highest good. And what I find, for me, is that more often than not, self-care is the thing that makes me uncomfortable. It's the thing that makes me experience more discomfort in a lot of cases. So as an example, earlier today, I did not want to work out. And when I asked myself, okay, do I really need a break because I feel like physically I need that, or mentally or energetically, or is there some part of my being that is telling me, hey, I'm holding up my hand, I need a break. I need some downtime. That is what feels like nourishment to me right now. Or was I just not wanting to work out because that didn't sound appealing? It didn't sound as comfortable. And of course, because of the early part of this podcast, you already know that I ended up doing that workout because the answer for me was the thing that's going to move me closer to nourishment is getting in that workout, because then I'm going to feel strong and I'm going to feel accomplished. And that's what I want right now. And there are plenty of days where I say, you know what? No, I really do need a break today. I'm going to tap out. But the important question that I ask myself is, what is in my best interest right now? What is actually nourishing me right now? And what's most in alignment with my highest good? And when I start to ask myself those questions, that's when I started realizing that I'd mistaken self-care for complacency and comfort. So I wanted to jump on here today and just talk about this briefly, because this is a really small shift and a really easy question to ask yourself to make sure that you're on the right path, whatever that path looks like for you. And you ultimately get to do whatever the hell you want. So maybe you're like, shut up, Brie, I really want to be in my comfort right now. More power to you. I just want you to be aware of that decision. And I just want to give you some tools. So if you find yourself in the same rut that I found myself in, you can recognize it and either choose to stay there or choose to move the fuck on. Up to you. But awareness is key, and that's what I want to help you do. So the next time you're contemplating self-care and you're wondering whether or not something is really in alignment with you, instead of using the phrase self-care, try using nourishment instead. See if that gives you a different answer, or if your body or your soul or your being tells you something differently. There's no shame in whatever you ultimately choose to do, but that might be the difference between getting in one more workout a week, sitting down to visualize at the end of a day, waking up a little bit earlier to meditate, choosing to journal instead of watch a Netflix show, spending an hour food prepping instead of going to a restaurant, or responding to a difficult email immediately versus pushing it off for a week and digging yourself into a deeper hole. I used to always do that to myself, especially if it was a confrontational email. I'd push it off, and I would just make the situation worse because I had so much avoidant anxiety about answering that email. It could also be the difference between going to bed early instead of choosing to stay up late, or waking up a little bit earlier in order to have a more consistent routine for yourself, or making a cup of tea at night instead of having a glass of wine, or even limiting your social media time and just reducing that a little bit and choosing to do something else with that time. Again, none of these decisions are right or wrong, better or worse than the other, just being aware of what the choice is that you're actively making, and whether or not that feels like inspired action, whether or not that feels in alignment with you, whether or not that's what's going to nourish you in that moment, whether or not that's going to be you prioritizing yourself. Because that's what we want self-care to really do, is prioritize us. What is the thing that I need right now in order to put myself first, in order to be my own priority? The hardest one for me is the not staying up late one. I am such a night owl, and I always try to get to bed by 10 o'clock, but without fail, it almost always ends up being like 11:30 or midnight. So as I am recording this episode, I am reminding myself of my own self-care needs, my own need to prioritize myself. And as I'm looking at the clock right now, it's 9 o'clock, and I'm thinking, okay, practice what you preach. I'm going to start getting ready for bed right after this. Again, practicing self-care, weaving it throughout our daily practices, and just being more intentional about how it shows up and how we're utilizing it, and not utilizing it as an excuse to seek comfort, and instead utilizing it to notice when we're escaping discomfort and we might need to lean into it. So as a reminder, ask yourself what's really going to nourish you, what really feels more in alignment, and whether or not you are escaping something you don't want to experience in that moment. That is how you can start to prioritize true self-care and not comfort-seeking behaviors. Thank you all so much for hanging out with me today. Have a fantastic rest of your week, and I will catch y'all in the next episode. Until then, go out there and manifest some miracles. I hope y'all enjoyed today's episode. If you want to check out the show notes, head over to www.themodernmanifestation.com/blog. If you're loving this podcast, please drop me a review, share this episode with a loved one, and follow me on Instagram @modernmanifestation. I love y'all so much, and thanks for listening.